A larger conversation on the government's new guidelines and for both sides of this digital divide. We're joined on this broadcast. I want to welcome first Shaina NC, spokesperson of the Bharatiya Janata Party, follows the media scene closely. Squaring off against her, we have Karuna Nandi, advocate in the Supreme Court. Rahul Khurshid has been with Twitter India, currently co-founder of Leminar Global. Coming on India Today for the first time is Aparmaya Radhakrishnan, founder of Koo, the Desi Atmanirbhar social media version of Twitter. A lot of people in government backing Koo and Aparmaya's project. Vikram Bhatt joins us, well-known filmmaker. I want to go across to Karuna Nandi first because we heard at length from the government, the minister laying out the philosophy behind these new digital media guidelines. You're very concerned and anxious about the rollout and the implementation. Lay out for our viewers, Ms. Nandi, why is it that you believe that people watching at this time need to be wary of the government's moves and intentions? Karuna Nandi.
Their stated goal is positive, that when there is revenge porn, for example, right, that we need swift action. There's already a law for it. The 2013 anti-rape laws that I contributed to, it has a provision under Section 354C. There is already a provision and a legislative provision, not just a rule, not just some rule, criminalizing this very thing. Now, what is the hard work that needs to be done? Because these people need to be arrested, of course, these the people who do this. The hard work that needs to be done is to strengthen our police forces and to make sure that we get swift and certain judgments. What do the new rules say? Since we are talking about gender here. They say that you can't insult women. Now, what is an insult of a woman? We don't know that, it's not defined anywhere. So does this become overbroad then and overly subject to what the decision maker, the gentleman or the lady sitting in government, or indeed the private censor? Because what we're doing is that we're requiring huge amounts of private censorship where the intermediaries are going to be guessing at what is insulting. And because they are worried about losing their safe harbor, which was provided by the IT Act under Section 79, which basically says that only when you have actual knowledge, and actual knowledge is defined in a particular manner, do you have to take something down. Now, because they have to be proactive, of course they will be overbroad. Who wants to be arrested? Aparna Purohit from Tandav has just been denied anticipatory bail. Which brings me to my second main concern, before I'm sure you want to go to others as well, is that with one click, without proper consultation, without proper legislative routing, what you have done is that you have brought OTT platforms as well as news media under the ambit of these rules and some kind of government committee, you know, which includes censorship. This, I think, is the ambit of the problem.
Okay. So let China NC respond to the concerns that you've laid. One, that there are existing laws which, if properly enforced, will mean that a lot of these new regulations don't need to be implemented. Two, there hasn't been adequate consultation. We've seen industry bodies put out public statements saying, please speak to us before you come out with these guidelines, that they impact our lives, and don't come out with these guidelines without adequate consultation. And three, that because now social media companies are under the scanner, they will censor more than they need to, because what is insulting and to whom? To someone something may be funny, to somebody else it's insulting. It's so subjective that there will be far more censorship than is actually required. China NC, your counter to what you heard from Karuna.
So Rahul, Prakash Javadekar ji and Ravi Prasad said it. Digital media has no code of ethics right until now. We know that there has to be a system of grievance redressal, not just for the OTT and digital platforms, but for what we are showing the younger generation, be it extreme derogatory comments. And I respect Karuna for taking up women's causes. Maybe she should also take up the causes where you have awful serials degrading women, abusing them, using the filthiest of language, and not even following a TV program code, as all channels have to. You, Rahul, target their group. When you are publishing something in a magazine or what you're showing on television, it can pass the program code. And all media should have a level playing field, that being the limited point. People have wanted this for so long. There have been over 50 questions raised in Parliament, and self-regulation mechanisms were not formed only for OTT platforms. It is a question of our own country's sovereignty when it comes to this kind of hate and misinformation that one sees on social media too. OTT platforms.
So, okay. Okay, so Rahil Khurshid, you're in an interesting position because you've been part of a tech giant as a key part of Twitter India. Now you're on the outside and you've seen both sides of the story. How do you think the big tech companies in San Francisco are likely to react to the Indian government's guidelines? They're obviously not happy with what the government is doing, but India is a huge market. Dollars and rupees lie on this market. How do you see this play itself out? Will it lead to greater acrimony, or will the tech companies just fall in line? And most importantly, what does this mean for the freedom of speech of users of these social media platforms? Rahil Khurshid.
Rahul, in that some aspects of the new guidelines, I think there will be compliance. Sure, like grievance office, appointment of grievance officers, and so on and so forth. That seems reasonable and should have been done, and is being done. That's perfect. My issue is with the intentionality of these guidelines, as opposed to coming from a place of strengthening India's internet governance framework. They come from a place of giving government more control on users' speech. Now, again, Karuna pointed it out very articulately in context of who gets to define what an insult is, who gets to define what objectionable content is. There is a case to be made for better, regulation of content for sure by social media companies itself, and a bunch of us have been asking for that those tools and those that moderation to be built into these platforms. But in that this is coming from a place of control. This is coming from a place where the government fundamentally, I mean, look at the rule that asks for the originator. How, first of all, like, how is that possible? I don't think any of these companies have technologically, they are able to determine what the source of an app is in the context that they're end-to-end encrypted. The second aspect of it is the problematic aspect. That tomorrow, Rahul, for example, a cop could determine that a message that you sent is problematic and then establish traceability back to you. And it's not like we haven't seen an abuse of the existing laws. We have. And as Karna pointed out, that the Amazon India exec...
That's a good point. Let Aparmaya Radhakrishnan respond to this. You know, you're making an important point. Even current laws have been misused. Therefore, with new guidelines, there's a fear that there could be overreach by the government, overreach by the social media companies in trying to ward off the government from their backs. As a new startup, new kid on the block, trying to make your space in this Atmanirbhar app, how do you see these new guidelines? Do you think it works to your favor against the big tech giants in San Francisco? And this point that Rahil made about end-to-end encryption and how difficult it will be for the tech companies to try and establish who the originator is and determine what is insulting comment and who decides what's insulting comment.
Yeah, so I'll just give you some numbers, right? Like, in any social media network, it's between 5 to 10% that people actually create content. 5 to 10% of the users actually create content, right? And amongst those, there will be a very few, like less than 1%, who actually cause the mischief, right? So we're talking about, everybody else, 99.9% of the people, using social media like they were. I think, the responsibility of keeping the network safe for every other user, the 99.9% of the users, is also very important, right? So to make sure that the 0.1% or 0.5% of the users who are going to, create mischief in some way or the other are also held accountable, along with knowing that they have freedom of speech, is actually a good move. As a small company, we have the advantage of building in these systems right from early on, saying, okay, if we have to have a grievance officer, are we taking care of every complaint that's coming? If there are women who are, getting harassed on the platform, if they come to us, there is a way in which we would behave, and it would be uniform, whether it is a small startup like ours or it is a big global giant, right? And as far as who is concerned, we are a public platform, which means every user is coming and saying things so that maximum number of people see it, right? So the end-to-end encryption part of it is more apt for, an app like WhatsApp maybe. But even there, right, I think what was cleared was, what I heard was the message wasn't necessary, but where was the origin, right? Who sent it in the first place, right? So that doesn't breach privacy in the case of,
Okay. No, but let's take mischief for example. Vikram Bhatt, I want to build with you on mischief. Now, for example, the government found, or not the government, but the Delhi police found Disha Ravi's toolkit to be an act of mischief. They leveled sedition charges. You can now ask for her to be knocked off social media. This went to a court. The court threw out the charges of sedition, saying because your vanity is wounded, it doesn't mean you invoke sedition. Similarly, for Tandav or somebody else may watch the program, find it sensible, somebody else may find it offensive. Are you concerned that this creates now a great scope for overreach and a clampdown on creative freedom and expression? Filmmaker Vikram Bhatt.
Rahul, I don't think you can compare the two issues, because I have watched the press conference lately, and as far as the OTTs are concerned, the rules are not the same as social media applications. So I don't think you should mix the two. As far as the OTTs are concerned, it is very clear that there will be just a regulation. I don't even think regulation is the right word for it. It's just more of information for people. There is no censorship. Government is not asking you to cut anything. They are saying simply tell the people what kind of experience it is. Whatever be the case. And we have set up a redressal system that
example, what's happened with Aparna Purohit and the Allahabad High Court denying anticipatory bail to her, saying such people make revered figures of religion of majority community a source of earning money, and you wouldn't do this against Lord Jesus or the Prophet, but Hindi filmmakers are doing this repeatedly and doing this unabashedly. Now this filmmaker, Karuna Nandi, will be in and already is in serious legal trouble and having to deal with the consequences of the OTT series that they made, Tandav. How are you seeing this play itself out in the context of a fear of overreach?
I think Mr. Bhatt has perhaps not read Rule 13 Part 4, where the three-tier structure that has been laid out in these rules allows the online curated content to be edited, modifications made, etc., including warning, censuring, admonishing, etc., but also much far more serious things by the Intergovernmental Committee, right? Now, this is very important because what's happening here is that through rules, it's not even a legislation, and I think this is very important because just through rules, what they are doing is setting up an entire censorship mechanism that actually doesn't exist with regard to, for example, the Press Council. With the Press Council, They have a number of very great aspirational sort of rules, but in terms of penalties, it's pretty much nothing, and we all know that, right? Um, and there has been a long debate about better regulation, enforcement, etc. But here, without that debate, with a stroke of a pen, without proper consultation, without legislative backing, we suddenly have a huge amount of regulation on online media and on OTT platforms, which takes away the safe harbor of these platforms and makes them vulnerable to arrest. The Parna Purohit point that you brought up is extremely important because one of the things that has been said in the anticipatory bail order is the use of the word Tandav.
So let China NC counter that.
Firstly,
let China NC counter that, because while you're saying, well, once again, hear my question, ma'am, before you respond. While you're saying there's no censorship and this is based on self-regulation, you've essentially put the government on top of this self-regulation. So you do your own self-regulation. If we agree with you, it's fine. If we disagree with you, we're the ones who hold the ultimate lever. And therefore, if we disagree, we will censor you the way you want, even though we're saying it is down to self-regulation and self-censorship. Respond to the concerns raised by Karuna, China NC.
Rahul, second tier would be self-regulation by a body which is headed by an eminent personality or a judge or somebody who is independently taking an opinion. Look, every freedom has to be responsible freedom. We don't even have a 13 plus or 16 plus, etc. And OTT and digital media will have to disclose information about themselves. And why shouldn't that be known to public? I mean, you're talking about the press council. I just want to ask you as a media house to answer. Can you show whatever you choose to on your television shows, on your news channels, or in your print media, or in your articles? Or is there a guideline? And why shouldn't there be a guideline? It's all very well to say we stand up for the cause of women when women are being abused so badly on the OTT platform, the kind of use of language, the degradation of our content is something that everyone as so-called liberals just keep mum about. I mean, freedom of expression comes with a sense of responsibility, and I think that today has been such a excellent press conference where both the ministers have explained the viewpoint, have said how Parliament has had over 50 questions raised vis-a-vis OTT platforms and the content being shown. So I don't see why we need to just contradict for the heck of contradicting.
Parmaya Radhakrishnan respond to it. No, one second. While phase 1 and phase 2, tier 1, tier 2 are fine. Tier 3 is essentially the government as big brother sitting on top of everything that you may do when it comes to self-regulation, and the concern will be that if if content creators don't agree with the line that the government draws or what supports them, then ultimately the government will pull the plug and do as it pleases. How do you respond to the concerns being raised by the likes of Rahil and the likes of Karuna Nandi? Aparmaya.
No, I think internet products, the biggest draw is that whatever you put out there has velocity, right? If you say something offline in a room, it doesn't have the velocity. It will stay in the room, or it will be amongst the people who are in the room, and it will never go out of it, right? But on the internet, it really travels, right? So if we treat a video platform like micro TV, right? If we treat a platform which is full of text as a micro newspaper, every single micro creator, they might not be a journalist, but at the end of it, they should be responsible enough to be able to come out and say their opinion outright, right? So I think, at Coup, we are always for the user. We want them to come and express, but we also want them to, have healthy discussions and not, incite violence against each other or any part of the community, right? So I think, with great power, the power of velocity on internet comes great responsibility, and all of us, should follow that.
Okay, so we've heard different points of view. We've heard from the government, we've heard from critics and naysayers. We will track how this space evolves. The fact that there must be some regulation, the fact that there's all kinds of stuff being said on social media, and that's problematic, including hugely insulting, defamatory stuff, factually incorrect stuff. So that needs to be corrected and countered. There can be no doubt about. But the devil is always in the detail and about how this is rolled out and whether it leads to a greater clamp down than is required. Does it do more harm than good? We will track this space very closely. I want to thank our guests for joining us: Rahul Khurshid, Karuna Nandi, Aparmaya Radhakrishnan from KU, Shaina NC, and Vikram Bhatt. I'll slip into a break. We'll have more on the other side. Stay with us. We're back in a moment.